Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, Context is Everything Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading another textbook. This textbook is Pioneers and Patriots, 1940. Copyright date. This is before United States was involved in World War II, and it is telling us about American history from that era. Let's get started here. Chapter 6, Section 8. The Church and the New Republic. Most Reverend John Carroll. The early life of John Carroll. The Catholic Church started a new life in our country when America became free. The first great Catholic leader in the new nation, was John Carroll. He was a native of Maryland. Had a homestead in Upper Marlborough, Maryland. There, John, in 1735, a boy was born. He was baptized with that name, John. John Carroll was 3 years younger than George Washington. Their birthplaces were not far apart. As young Carroll grew up, he was given the first lessons by his mother. She had been educated in France. John was fortunate to have so good a teacher. It was hard to learn in those days and to get a Catholic education in America. The laws in most of the colonies did not permit Catholic schools. If one Catholic school opened, it was almost sure to be closed. Yet they did open at times. One of these was a Jesuit academy in Maryland. There, John Carroll was sent. He was quite fortunate because he was able to study with the Jesuits long enough to get ready for college. At St. Omar's College, there were no Catholic colleges in the colonies in those troubled times. Catholics sent their sons to Europe to be educated, if they could afford to do so. St. Omar's was a college in a part of France called Flanders. There, John Carroll was sent. He found other boys there from the fine old Catholic families of Maryland. The boys received a splendid training under Jesuits who taught at St. Omar's. John Carroll enjoyed his student days at college in spite of hard work. The boys rose at 5 o'clock in the morning and went to bed at 9 o'clock at night. There was hardly any idle moment during the day. They had so much studying to do, not at all times, however, was spent at work. There was games to play. The favorite game was called Trap the Ball, as shown in the picture. I don't understand, but here I'll show you. It was not nearly as much fun as baseball or football, is what it says here, and I agree. That does not look very fun. And I like how they're indoctrinating American society in 1940 to say, our American pastimes are baseball and football. They are American games. Father Carroll. John Carroll felt that God wanted him to be a priest. He joined the Society of Jesus. He studied long and hard and prayed much. Finally, he was ordained a priest. Then Father Carroll returned to his beloved Maryland. He had been away 27 years. That was a long time. He returned just before the Revolution. Father Carroll found his fellow Catholics had many trials and troubles. Maryland had been settled by Catholics, but the Catholics had few rights. The Puritans had taken control of Maryland. They made unjust laws which made it very hard for people who did not believe as they did. The Puritans would permit no Catholic schools, no Catholic churches. Mass had to be offered in private homes for few Catholics who had the courage to remain in this colony. A mission to Canada. During the American Revolution, Father Carroll came to know Benjamin Franklin. Father Carroll went to Franklin on the important journey to Quebec. Went with Franklin an important journey to Quebec, Canada. Father Carroll's cousin, the great Charles. Father Carroll's cousin, the great Charles Carroll, was also a member of the party. Congress sent these Americans to ask the people of Canada to join in our fight against England. Father Carroll and others could not persuade the Canadians to help us. England had been very clever. She treated the Catholics very badly in some parts of the world, but in Canada, she treated them very well. Catholics had full liberty in Canada. The Canadians, on the other hand, were afraid to trust the Americans. They knew that the people of New England looked on the Church Catholic religion with contempt, so the French Canadians would not risk taking part in our struggle. Bishop Carroll. After the Revolution, the Pope put Father Carroll in charge of the Catholics. In the United States, the Catholics numbered about 30,000 persons. The church kept on growing. Soon it needed a bishop, and Father John Carroll was chosen as the first bishop of the United States. In the United States. This was in 1789, the same year which George Washington became the first president. Bishop Carroll's diocese was Baltimore. It took in the whole United States. The church continued to grow. More bishops were needed. Dioceses were set up in New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and Bardstown. Bishop Carroll became the Archbishop of Baltimore in 1808. Archbishop Carroll. For 7 years after he became Archbishop, John Carroll lived to see the church grow. It moved forward with great strides. The Archbishop could look back upon some wonderful changes. When he was a boy, he could not even get a Catholic education in his native land. In most of the colonies, priests were forbidden to say Mass. This began to be changed after freedom was won. The Bill of Rights. The First Amendment to the Constitution protected the Catholics very much. To amend the Constitution means to change part of it or to add something to it. There were 10 amendments to the Constitution. They were called the Bill of Rights. More amendments have been added since. The first of these amendments granted freedom of worship. Catholics could now have their own churches and their own schools. Changes in Archbishop Carroll's time. Before he died, Archbishop Carroll saw Georgetown College founded. He saw seminary raised up in Baltimore. A seminary is a school to train young men to be priests. He lived to see Catholics gain the respect of their countrymen and lived to see Jefferson make the Louisiana Purchase. Many Catholics came into our country through the purchase of Louisiana. The good nuns were ready to begin their work in schools and hospitals. Archbishop Carroll had lived in a wonderful time. Mother Seton and Sisters of Charity. Elizabeth Ann Bailey, a baby girl, was born in New York City when that city was hardly more than a village. Her name was Elizabeth Ann Bailey, and her birthday was August 28th, 1774. This was just before the American Revolution. At that time, there was no Catholic church and very few Catholics in New York. Today, the church in America is strong partly because of this wonderful woman and her work. Elizabeth Ann Bailey's father was a famous doctor in New York. Neither of her parents were Catholic. Early life. Elizabeth's childhood was like that of other children whose parents had wealth. She lived in a large, comfortable house and was carefully educated by her father. Her mother died, but very kind stepmother took her place to make sure that Elizabeth's youth was happy. Elizabeth Bailey married a splendid young man named William Magee Seton. Ill health soon forced Mr. Seton to take a long vacation. He decided to visit Italy, where he had friends. Mr. Seton did not recover for his health. He died while abroad. That was a very sad experience for Elizabeth Ann Seton. However, there was a comforting side. In Italy, she first learned about Catholic Church. She received the grace of her true faith. She became a Catholic when she returned to New York. Early convert years. At the time, Catholics were not highly respected by their neighbors. Mrs. Seton soon learned that she had to suffer for her faith. The years following her conversion were still filled with hardships. Many of her friends and even members of her family would have nothing to do with her. It was most difficult in those days for a woman to make a living. The fact that Elizabeth Seton was a convert to the Catholic Church made it even more difficult. Finally, she went to Baltimore, where she had her first success. Mother Seton's work. Elizabeth Seton's ambition was not to make a comfortable living, but to help others. She was very much interested in the care of the young and the poor. Another ambition of hers was to dedicate her life to God. This she did when she took her vows as a nun before Archbishop Carroll. Meantime, a number of splendid women came to her to share in her work of helping children and those in need. Elizabeth Seton's group formed themselves into a community. They followed the rule of St. Vincent de Paul, wrote for his nuns in France. Elizabeth Seton was elected the first superior of the new community, the Sisters of Charity. Mother Seton's sisters moved to Emmitsburg in Maryland. This became the first American headquarters of the Sisters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul. Soon their work extended far beyond Maryland. They founded schools, homes for children, hospitals, homes for the aged, and began many other important works. The great holiness of Miss Mother Seton's life seemed to bring a special blessing upon the work of the Sisters of Charity. Indeed, Mother Seton was so holy that someday she may be declared a saint. That's it. Goodbye, and God bless.